Welcome to Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. My very special guest today is Brad Hart, who has a 20-year experience as an entrepreneur and 16 years managing wealth under his belt. Brad is committed to helping entrepreneurs and investors reach their full potential so they can focus on solving the grand challenges of our time. With extensive experience in real estate, investments, trading, marketing, sales and peak performance strategy, he's built and helped build several companies growing revenues and profits into the millions of dollars. Brad is a founding member of the Knowledge Business Blueprint, a speaking and training team led by Tony Robbins and Dean Graciosi, a community and self-education movement which has helped tens of thousands of people to launch their own masterminds. He's also built a mastermind in his latest initiative in helping entrepreneurs add $100,000 to their business in profits per year with only 5 to 10 hours a month time commitment. Brad grew up in New York and now lives in San Diego, California, which is one of my favourite places. Welcome, Brad, to the show. Brad grew up in New York and lives in San Diego, California. Welcome, Brad, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I appreciate being here, and thanks everybody for listening.
Great. All right, that bio is an interesting bio. It's a little bit like me. You've done a lot of different things. So I think one of the things with entrepreneurship is that they never stand still, right?
Yeah, we got to keep it moving, you know?
Yeah.
If you slow down, you might just die.
We might run over the top of you. Right. There's one thing about, I think, when you talk about someone's got experience, right, and they've pretty much done the same job for 20 years. So reality is they've probably got 1 year's experience times 20.
Yeah, well, I've launched a lot of projects in that time. I've probably had 3 or 4 big successes and then a lot of, or total failures. Yeah. That's totally part of it too. But experience is experience, and if you learn from your failures, then hopefully you don't do it that way the next time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think having that breadth of understanding of the market is really important. So today we're going to talk about masterminds. And I think it's an important thing. And in Australia, masterminds are not that big. So it's something that I've seen in America that's very big, and all sorts of variations of masterminds, obviously the big ones and the more intimate and all that sort of stuff. But in Australia, it's not that popular. And I think it's a sad thing because I think masterminds are so powerful.
I would agree with you.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal mastermind either. You know what I mean? Like I think people realise they do have masterminds, they just don't. It's not formalised, right?
That's right, John. And what I'm realizing also is they have different names for what is essentially the same thing. Right? We might put a different spin on it, but training, workshops, some sort of corporate retreat could be a form of a mastermind. It's anywhere you get to get clarity on what you're doing by having people ask questions. It's getting connected to the resources, the opportunities, the people, and the systems that you need to move your mission forward faster. And it's really having that accountability and support and trusted environment where you can be vulnerable and authentic in what's going on so that people can serve you and they know where you're at and it's not, going to be used against you. So there's a lot of benefits to masterminding. And I think, whatever you call it, it's the same thing. It's people helping people. And that's the most important part.
And so do you find that, like the mastermind people have to be at a high level to you, at the same level to you? What do you think is the best kind of mix to that scenario?
So probably the most famous early mastermind was a mastermind of peers. So it was 4 big titans of industry, and I'm going to butcher all of their names, but it was like Westinghouse and Ford and Edison was in this one. It was called the Vagabonds, and they were all at the same level of success, but in very different industries. So they could share insights about one another's problems that you can get within your own thought bubble in your own industry. And you may not be able to get from your subordinates or even your peers because they're in competition with you theoretically. So, heavy as the head that lies the crown, you'd find other people who are at your level and do that. But you can have masterminds where you have a guru or a central figure that's, more experienced or has more success in a particular realm that everybody's trying to learn. You can have multiple experts, which is helpful. Or you could just do a kind of a peer-based mastermind where everybody's doing different things and they have different levels of success, but they all come around and bring their various perspectives to these particular issues, right? Because I believe it's all about gaining clarity. It's about having that accountability, that support to work through these problems, starting with the most important part, which is getting clear on what it actually is. A lot of people just dive right at the tip of the iceberg, but they don't get the whole iceberg.
And I think the thing too with a mastermind, if it's a good mastermind, people will give you honest answers and tell you the truth, right?
Yeah, that's the ideal piece, right? They expect the same from you when you go on the hot seat. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think if you rely on staff, staff are not going to always tell you necessarily to tell the whole truth because they're worried they're going to lose their jobs. Your vendors,
they may not know.
Yeah,
and they may have a vested interest in propagating the wrong solution or the wrong thing, or they might have political things going on. There's very few arenas and avenues where people can really be real, raw, and authentic and not get punished for it. And I believe masterminds are one of those.
Yeah, because there's no ramifications really at the end of the day, is there? I mean, I guess the whole thing also is they care, but not that much, right? Because at the end of the day,
Sure.
I mean, it's not about them getting vested interest in it.
100%. And I get clients all the time. They're like, well, I'm afraid to share this. I'm afraid to share that. I'm like, we're all under NDA here for a reason, right? If you're paying to be in my mastermind, which is a mastermind of masterminds, I teach people how to build masterminds. You're sharing things in the confidence that there's a legal agreement that everybody who joins this group has deigned not to share anything outside the group. And if there was a bad actor, which I'm pretty good at selecting people, and so is my team, but if there was a bad actor, they would be, they would be kicked out without a refund. So, I'm not super worried about that because they don't have any, there's a huge penalty for doing it and no real gain, right? Because most of these people, it's not like we're sharing trade secrets and industry information that can't go public. Like it's not that level of dire, but everybody thinks they're more important than they are and their secrets are more important than they think they are. And that's what perpetrates and perpetuates the issue is that nobody has, they don't bring any air and waft out the room,
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point because I get it a lot, and you probably do in your game too, is people say, I can't tell you what I'm doing because somebody might find out and copy me. And I go, number one, most people are so lazy they'll never will. If they do copy, they'll do a bad job of it. And at the end of the day, you look at some of these big companies that have copied other companies. It doesn't mean they've succeeded. Like you look at the taxi industry, try to copy Uber. They haven't been able to do that, right?
Well, and just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's your idea, right? The steam engine was invented in 4 or 5 different places at once. When an idea hits the mainstream and its time has come, it doesn't matter if you had it first. It's who took action on it first, who executed. That's 99% of the battle. Having an idea, I've had $10 billion ideas in my lifetime, easily. More than that, probably. I probably have one every other month. Like I'll probably have like a legitimate $1 billion idea every other month. But does that mean I'm actually going to go out and execute on it? And the answer is no. So I stopped being so hung up on whether I have a good idea or not. It's like, well, am I the person to execute it? And if so, what's the next logical step that I can take to get momentum? Because momentum is everything in execution, as you know, as an entrepreneur. It's not getting stuck along the way. And some people are just so good at this that they upend multiple industries, like Elon Musk. He's doing rockets and cars and solar panels and all this crazy stuff because he understands that those ideas aren't new. Everybody's been talking about electric cars and solar and rockets forever. But he had a new spin on them and he went and he acted on it as fast as he possibly could. And he's great at getting the people involved that have the smarts to do it because he couldn't do it all on his own.
And I think that I was reading a book, I can't remember which one it is, I'm reading about quite a few, I think it might be in the Lean Startup or something like that, and it talks about the concept of you got this great idea, so go and pitch it to some really big companies and see if they pay any attention. And the chances are they won't, right? They've got so much going on inside their own companies. They haven't got time to even look at your idea. Yeah. So it's not like they're going to steal your idea because they don't even care. Like until they actually start seeing it as direct competition even.
They have so much more to lose than you realize. People have this like understanding of companies as being these behemoths that can just do no wrong and they can get away with anything. They're above the law. And the reality is like they want to pay you. They want to license this from you. So they have a clear cut deal where you get a percentage and they get a percentage and they get to leverage your intellectual property, but they want somebody to pay at the end of the day. They really want to be in partnership with somebody who is a creator because guess what? They're going to get your next idea and the next idea after that, if you do good business. So it's very short-sighted for most people to presume that people are going to steal from them before they've even created anything and then use that as an excuse not to start.
Yeah, that's probably the reason, right? If you don't tell anybody, then because when we do book publishing, right, we say to clients, well, tell people you're going to write a book and you see this white face come up suddenly because they're thinking, oh God, I can't tell anybody because if I tell them, then I'll have to do it, right?
That's real, yeah. And if I fail, then what does that mean about me? Because my identity is on the line. So if you have an idea out there, run full direction at it. And you're going to realize like that idea is not going to stay the same. It's going to be a different idea by the time it actually goes to market because most people's first ideas aren't that good. There's so many, if you look at any major company like Twitter or Google or any of these companies, they didn't nail it out of the gate. They started with one thing and they pivoted to another thing and they tried a lot of things that have failed. It's just part of the process.
Actually, I'm reading Elon Musk's autobiography at the moment. It's quite interesting about PayPal and stuff and the fact that they actually...
Did he write one? Is it an autobiography or is it a biography?
It's an autobiography. Basically, a journalist wrote it, and it was quite, well, long story short, but basically he was approached by this journalist. He gets approached quite a lot, and he asked to write a book, and he goes, no. And then the journalist said, well, I really want to do it. I'm going to do it anyway if you don't, right? And Elon says, okay, well, as long as I can read it first before it goes to press and put, cliff notes in and stuff. No, you're not seeing it before I write it. You're not seeing it until it's published. And it's like, and he kept saying no to him.
So it's an autobiography, but it's really ghostwritten.
Yeah. So Elon really wants to, have his own story. And he said, no, it's going to be like, so in the end he gave in because Elon likes being told no. all right, because he thinks that people really actually value something if they tell him he's wrong or that, not to do it. So listening to this book. It's very interesting about PayPal because he basically bought PayPal, or they merged with another company that actually did have PayPal. So because they were doing one thing really well and the other company had a good idea, and that eventually got bought out by eBay. But the reality is that what he tried to do was create a bank. He was actually going to create this big
X.com. That was the original idea.
Yeah, X.com.
Too big, too soon. We still don't really have one online bank, although we have some that are kind of parts of an online bank.
I think it was a missed opportunity because I think with banking was they cottoned on it pretty quickly. So most industries, I think, don't cotton on to things very quickly. Like you look at the tax industry or anything like those sort of industries have been very disrupted, like the real estate industry and things like that. They don't quick on as quick. But banks being a lot less of them essentially. I think they talk. They cottoned on it very quickly and
there's not a lot of seats at that table, I hear.
No, exactly, and I think that's the reason. And they all copy each other. So I was reading. I know what I was reading the other day. So talking about banks, and they don't really have any new ideas. They just copy each other. And so they were very quick. Once one thought of it, everybody copied it, and suddenly you're on. I'm actually writing a chapter about this whole thing in a book coming up. And I think that's the thing. Like you got to look at it in the scenarios that your particular idea may not even be the idea that floats in the end. It could be something totally different.
Well, it might even be the best idea. Like McDonald's is a hamburger company ostensibly, but they actually own the most expensive real estate in the world. So they happen to sell hamburgers and French fries and shakes. But what they really are is real estate holdings.
Yeah, so it's not what you think sometimes. So tell me about masterminds and something that I've sort of spoken to clients about over the time. And I think what happens is they get tied up in the complexity of it and they don't launch it and it gets too complicated and that's the end of it. So what's your idea? Because I noticed you got a book called The 8-Minute Mastermind. So obviously it must be a bit quicker than normal, right?
Yeah. So the whole idea of the book, and you can check it out at 8minutemastermind.com. It will give you some free goodies just for listening. You get 101 questions for facilitators, 50 recordings, and a cheat sheet, as well as an opportunity to grab the book, free plus shipping, just whatever it costs to get to your door. Anywhere in the world, we'll send it to you. You can check it out there. The 8-Minute Mastermind, the name started out as the idea is like I could do a hot seat in 8 minutes. And that was what we were aiming at. And I just loved the number 8. And I've had a lot of things happen in my life that are revolving around the number 8. It's the symbol for infinity. When you turn it sideways, there's a lot of interesting things that come along with that number. So it was significant to me. And I decided to name my book that. And it was kind of catchy, like the 4-hour work week, 8-Minute Mastermind. I was like, okay. And then, I feel like you can get through a chapter in 8 minutes. I kept them nice and short and punchy. And it's a nice little reference guide. So that's where the name came from. But really a mastermind for me, compared to other models, right? Because I've done a lot of different things now. I've written books. Books are great, but they take a year to write. And to really write a good one, it takes a lot of time and energy. And there's multiple revisions and editing. And, to get that finished product in your hand that you can consume is actually useful. That's a little bit of work.
Yes.
With a course, same thing. You need to have this big marketing team and you have to do big launches. You have to have affiliates and, it's challenging to sell a course. Coaching and consulting is easier to sell and you can get more money for it as a one-on-one thing, but now it's one-on-one time. And, there's that feast and famine wheel where you're up and down and you're selling a bunch and marketing a bunch and then you're fulfilling a bunch and it's back to square one. And then there's membership sites. Everybody wants to have a membership site with recurring billing. But if you don't have a list that's like 50,000 people plus, the likelihood you're going to sell enough to make the rent is very low. So that's kind of a not right now thing. You don't start with a membership. But so I started thinking like, what's the model that most people can start with that's, doesn't have a lot of inventory, really no inventory, no overhead, no big startup costs. You can get it running in a week or two if you're good and you know who you're going to work with and you have a solid offer. And you can use it to learn. You can use it to grow. You can do it as the facilitator. It doesn't have to be all on you or all the delivery. And you can really, as a business model, plug in 6 figures of revenue into your business in 5 to 10 hours a month of delivery. Now that's not including, marketing and sales time. Obviously that's a little more time intensive, but once the delivery is going, it's not that much time to deliver. I have 50 some odd clients now. It's wonderful. And I'm able to really work with the ones that need the most help at any given time. And my capacity is higher because I really only spend about a day of my week delivering for those clients. And usually less than half a day. It's like maybe a few hours a week. It's not a lot. And then we have a call every week and that's about it. And people send me questions as they have them and I answer them and I bring in experts to solve bigger things and to add more value to the community. And it's not all on me to deliver, which is awesome. And I can always hire coaches to help pick up the slack. So I love the model. It's a great place to start. It's a great way to build credibility. It's a great way to build expertise. It's a great way to start moving towards the business that you want. And where you end up is you have this really cool mastermind that you now have built up all this content in the vault and you can begin to, put out courses and low ticket stuff. And maybe write a book and really figure stuff out, because nobody can learn or teach in a vacuum. You need people to interact with, that ask questions in different ways and ask you to rephrase things. And you get different insights from interacting with people. So if you just go straight to the course, I know because I started trying to do this in the beginning, I spent $45,000 on my first info products business in 2011, and it fell flat on its face. And I tried everything to make it work. And even though I felt like I had a good idea, I couldn't quite find the market fit. And what was more important is I couldn't get it to advertise in a way that was functional, because the powers that be at that time, how would I know this beforehand? But, Craigslist didn't want me advertising something that was in direct competition with their top clients, which were real estate agents. So, so you learn these things only through trial and error. And the point is, you don't start with the mass market thing. Tesla didn't start with the Model 3. They started with a big toy for rich people that they sold 1,000 of, which is totally reasonable. You could cold call and sell 1,000 of these cars to the top collectors in the world, raise $10 million, and now you have enough money to start a company and then build out the infrastructure to build the P85D. And even then they didn't go mass market. Only now with the Model 3 did they ever really decide to go mass market. And they still are a very tiny part of the market. And now their stock is going crazy and splitting 5 for 1 next week. And I'm a happy shareholder. So I don't know as much as I did. I owned $22 shares. I had 1,000 shares at $22 back in the day, which I'd be very, very happy with if I still owned them all. But I own a good chunk and I'm happy. And, they've done really well. And I give Elon Musk all the credit in the world because he pioneered a system, or I don't know if he pioneered it, but he utilized and rolled out a system that I copy now and I teach my clients about, which is start with the high ticket, high touch thing that you can charge money for, and then build out from there. Like I've seen masterminds now with that as the core piece with 50 or 100 paying members. And then they have a local chapter where they have a membership, and it's like different offshoots, and they'll do several $1 million in revenue because they have these multiple tiers that people can play at. But it started with the mastermind.
It's actually interesting. I read about Toyota. Apparently when Toyota tried to get into the marketplace, they couldn't afford to mass produce cars like some of the big American companies. So they actually had a lot of equipment that they kept changing over. So they got very fast at changing all this equipment over to be able to create these cars in small volumes, but very well built. Mm-hmm. So the reality is when you look at Toyota today and see how many cars they built, but the reality is they started off very small. They started off just making a small number of cars well until they got market share.
Well, and that's the key is people don't realize they think they have to be the biggest, baddest competitor out of the gate. But every company that's smart starts with solving a very specific problem really well. Mm-hmm. And that's how they get traction. And then they have some money to play with.
So in masterminds, though, pricing-wise, what do you think is a good pricing model in terms of, say...
Yeah, so...
obviously it depends on the industry, obviously. But
totally. Depends on the problem you're solving, depends on the expertise, depends on your expertise, depends on your level of sophistication, what demand there is for your services. It can be a straight-up replacement for your coaching and consulting. It can be a hybrid. It can be a course attached to it. It can be a lot of different things. So there's all these variables. But I always tell people for a one-off beta test mastermind, that's like a half a day to 2 days typically, no less than $500. And, you're aiming for like 1,000 would be a really good, it's reasonable. People can get into it. And it's not so cheap that, you're running around trying to get 1 million clients. You can do it with 5, 10, 15 people and you're really happy with the result. And then you get feedback and you customize from there and work out any issues, and then you go bigger from there. And it's just a way to quickly iterate and get running in that direction so that when you eventually flesh everything out, you have recurring revenue, you have multiple clients, and you have a feeder system which brings you, these leads through ideally, for example, a book funnel is really effective where you sell books, but you also sell lower ticket offerings, prices, courses, things that people don't really need to talk to somebody to buy. That helps you liquidate your ad spend and reach more people, and you're sifting through finding the ones that will actually join your mastermind.
Makes sense, yeah. And start small, obviously. I mean, I think part of the problem is if you try to start something really big, it'll crush you in the amount of work required rather than just try to start simple.
Well, it's just too big. And you gotta learn and grow into the person that can do all that, or delegate all that, or lead a team to do all that, and knows enough about each thing to do it. So like I always tell people, start with who's your person, your avatar, what's the offer, what's the transformation you're providing, and that's the OAT or the TOW, if you will, whatever the acronym is. And if you can get that baseline piece, okay, now I can go to market with that and start selling that. Okay, now I've got some paying clients. Cool, we got real money in the bank. We know that people are willing to pay for this because they've actually paid for it. And then we go and build it. And you do this in integrity. You speak to, hey, this is going to be a beta or a pilot, and this is going to be the way we run it. And we're going to do this price now, but it'll be more when we do it for real, when it's fully fleshed out. And you'll get more of my time now, but less later. And if you're really not happy, I'll give you your money back. So if they're not willing to buy under those circumstances, it probably wasn't that good of an idea to begin with. We need to pivot. We need to go back. But I'd rather have you know that in a week or two instead of 6 months from now, after you've invested all your time and energy. And this is your one shot and it's got to work. And oh my God, when you could have tested 12 things in that time if you really wanted to.
I mean, the whole light bulb thing, right?
Exactly. So, that's how I teach. That's how I recommend people do it. And it's confronting, right? And I run into a lot of people that just, they have a lot of ideas about the way things should be, and they want to run their business a certain way. I'm like, here's what works. And you can try it a different way. I can't guarantee that it'll work. I just know that this works because I've done it 100 times. And I understand psychology, I understand sales, I understand marketing, I understand how people buy and why they buy. And, I'm giving you the playbook. If you want to try a different way, I just can't validate that it'll work as well. But there's certainly more than one way to skin a cat. So, I highly recommend that people, because here's the thing. You got to check your ego. You got to check your mindset and your beliefs at the door. Because if you were the person who could have the things that you want already, then you'd already have them, right? If you're the kind of person that could run $1 million business, you'd be running $1 million business. Until you're a $1 million business runner, you're not that person yet. And you have to kind of take everything that you think and feel with a grain of salt, and maybe recognize that, if somebody's telling you something in your best interest, who you've paid money to in order to get a result that you paid for, that you want, maybe throwing out their advice without trying it or really giving its due is silly and short-sighted. But people do it all the time. And I just try to, I try to gently remind them, like, you paid me for a reason, is to tell you what works. I'm not here to argue with you about the nature of reality or how you perceive it. I'm here to tell you what's worked and what will work and what continues to work. And if we need to, we'll shift gears and make it more applicable to what you're doing specifically. But generally, the structure works for a reason. And
it's quite interesting. I had a situation where I had a friend of mine that runs a sporting thing, and I said to him, I gave him this really great idea about recurring income. And he goes, oh, no, that's not very good. Come up with something better. And the reality was, he hadn't paid me for it. So I said, well, that's the last good idea you're ever going to get out of me, because the other reality is people pay me a lot of money for these ideas, and you're currently just going, no, not doing it. And the reason why is sometimes there's no skin in the game. They're not paying for the idea. They're not paying for the consulting. So it's a throwaway thing. So free advice is worth every cent, right?
Yeah. People pay attention to what they pay for and what pays them. We're very fickle, because in the age of information, in the age of Google and YouTube, if free information worked, everybody would be a shredded billionaire in their dream relationship with perfect kids and no problems.
Yeah.
And guess what? We're not. And the reason is because people pay attention to what they pay for and what pays them. We have limited faculty in which to focus, and we need to prioritize our time. And it takes discipline and self-administered discipline. Otherwise, life will discipline you. You'll be relegated to have to work for somebody else and build their dream. Because guess what? We all need to make money to make the world go round. That's just how this world is. I'm not here to argue with you. It's just reality.
Yeah, money talks ultimately. I mean, that's it.
If people want to pay for something, great. Produce it. If people aren't, move on.
Yeah, I know. I was actually listening to a great little podcast. Got a little idea the other day, was that try to figure out how quickly you can explain something succinctly to someone that gets a sale. So the shortest amount of words that you can use, and I think that like a mastermind scenario would be that the better you get at explaining it, and the shorter just time it takes to explain it and get their interest is really the key. And if you can get interest from that, well, then you've got a product to sell.
Yeah, I always love it's in my trunk right now. Do you want to buy it? That's my favorite. Oh no, I just, because they really want it until the money conversation comes up, and then there's no money forthcoming. Okay, well, that wasn't that good of an idea.
No. And I think the thing is that if they don't ask you, how do I do that or anything like that, you know that you've stuffed up, because it's like dead silence. The crickets come up and it's like, okay, now I haven't explained it well. And I think
people don't want to hurt your feelings, but it's better to have your feelings hurt than go financially upside down,
Yeah. I mean, it'd be really bad if you actually did that idea and then found out it was a bad idea, and someone said, oh, I knew it was a bad idea, but I didn't want to upset you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'd hate that person. That person's not your friend.
Exactly right.
So yeah, I mean, regardless of what you're going to create in the world, and I think this could be like Kickstarter is another great example of this. Kickstarters, you invest a moderate amount of money in some video production, some marketing, some additional assets, creating a prototype, and then you put it out to the world. You say, will you buy this? And we'll give it to you under the best possible circumstances. We'll incentivize you as much as we possibly can to get you to be early adopters. And lots of people are willing to do that, provided it's a good offer. And if they're not, then it's probably your product. And it's a better thing to learn that than having gone to production and all that crazy stuff that goes along with that. Because you could be $100,000 in the hole before you figure out if it'll work or not. And that used to be the way business was done. People would spend untold amounts of money on stuff that just never worked, never went to market properly, and they lost. Luckily, they were giant corporations, but they wouldn't have got that way if they had been doing those in the beginning.
I mean, you look at Google. I mean, amount of projects they've started and never finished.
Yeah.
And they decided
they're getting sued over a couple of them, like Google Plus now.
Yeah, they decided it was an absolute failure at 700 million users. I mean, I don't know exactly how you determine failure, but you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I guess when you're on the scale of Google, if 2 billion people aren't using it, then...
Yeah, exactly right. I guess so. I mean, I think so. Part of what you said to me is you built several seven-figure businesses. How did you do that? What's your recipe for success, if you like?
And it's so weird because I've done it in different industries too. So I got my start in real estate. That was my first serious entrepreneurial job. And I did that for a couple of years. My dad passed away, and then I got into financial trading because I always wanted to work on Wall Street. I actually had worked as a cold caller on Wall Street prior to that. But I didn't really want to be on the trading desk or the trading floor. Like I didn't have that kind of vision. I just had this vision of being able to make my money work for me and invest and all that good stuff. And I ended up, as part of this mastermind I was a part of, I gave somebody a stock tip one day. And he came to me months later and he said, "Hey, you know that 3D printing stock you turned me on to?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Doing great." I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, I paid for my wedding with that. I'm like, "That's cool, man. Congratulations. It's awesome." Weddings aren't cheap. I don't know what they're like in Australia, but they're pretty expensive
I don't
here.
think they're ever cheap.
Yeah. And then he says to me, he says, "Well, can I give you money to manage? Like, can I give you some of this money?" And you just like turn it over a few times. I'm like as if it was that easy. Just turn it over a couple times. I'm like, let me ask around, because I wouldn't do it just for you. Like I'd want to have a group of people that did it because, I'm doing the math in my head. Like I need to have a certain amount of money for it to make sense if I was taking a percentage, right? Mm. So I made a list of 200 people that I'd met over the years that I thought maybe under some circumstance might invest. To my chagrin and crazy, I was trying to prove myself wrong, but 17 of them said yeah, and they gave me money. Like, okay, we're doing this. And I started a hedge fund, right? Because I went to people and been like, "Well, what do I do with this money? Like, if I raise it?" They're like, "Oh, you start a hedge fund." And these are smart people. These are people that trade on Wall Street. I'm like, "Well, I can just start a hedge fund. Like, I don't need the Pope to come and like bless me and wave a wand and be like, 'You are hedge fund worthy.'" And they're like, "No, you need an LP, a GP, based in Delaware. Here's a lawyer, here's an accountant, third-party administrator, and
so there's a process to it.
Bylaws. Yeah, it's basically like, here's all the stuff you need to do a hedge fund." I'm like, "I don't need a license." Like, nope. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go start a hedge fund. And I had this exemption that doesn't even exist anymore. It was in 2012, where I could, bring on a certain number of unaccredited and a certain number of accredited. And as long as it was under a certain number of people overall, it was fine. I think
Australia has something similar where you can only have 20 sophisticated investors or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. So there's something like that. I don't remember all the ins and outs, to be honest, but I partnered up with another fund that was already running. It was successful, and they managed some of the money and I managed some of the money. And lo and behold, we had 106% year in 2013, which was a 25% year of the market. So we quadrupled the market on a good year. So we're really happy with that. And we had this one month where we made like $1,040,000 in profit in May. I'll never forget, because my whole life I was like, I want to be a millionaire. And then all of a sudden we made $1 million. And it wasn't all my money, but we made $1 million in a short amount of time. And I'm like, holy crap, this is wild. And I never thought I'd make that kind of money. And I always thought that if I made that kind of money, all my problems would be magically solved and everything would be amazing forever. And I would live life, really well from then on out. And it just wasn't true, man. I was actually burned out. I was disconnected. I felt like I didn't have any real strong relationships, and I had money, but it didn't really make me any happier. And, there's people listening to this right now. They're like, "I can't pay my rent. Screw you." But really, like, if you ever get to be blessed and fortunate enough to have all your dreams come true, make sure there's fulfillment attached to it. Make sure you're doing something that actually fulfills people. So now I have 3 rules, which are help a lot of people, have a lot of fun, make a lot of money. And sometimes I shouldn't put rule 3 as rule 3, but it's rule 3 for a reason. Sometimes I do things because I want to help people and have fun that won't make me a lot of money or will actually hurt my financial position. But I feel like I'm happier overall as a result of this. And this year has been hard. I'm not going to stand here like, nothing's ever wrong. I've had some ups and downs this year, and I lost big on a big bet earlier this year with COVID. And, I was in the hole, and I'm still climbing out of that hole. But overall, generally, in the last 6 years since I've been running this particular business, I've been thrilled, helping people build their businesses. And, it's been a few bad experiences, but by and large, generally, like, people are super happy to have they value my contribution. They value what I have to offer. And I do want to build different types of companies. I probably will. But for now, I love doing what I'm doing. I love writing books. I love getting them out to people. And I love the constant inflow of people like, "Oh, I started this mastermind, changed my life. I started helping this person, and oh my God, and this and that." And it's just, it makes it all new again. There's only so much that you can experience as yourself, and then it becomes commonplace. After a while,
sometimes you think that it's normal, right? And then they go, "No." It's like, and you realize that other people are different levels, and then they don't.
It's interesting. And I know a lot of people like this. So I'm not saying I'm the biggest, baddest, guy on the hill, but I get sometimes a couple hundred messages a month of people that are like legitimately enthralled with what I'm doing. And that feels really good. I'm not going to say it doesn't. I'm sure there's people that get millions. But for somebody like me who never anticipated being much of anything, growing up in the place I grew up with the problems I had, I was happy just to get out of my childhood alive. You know, it's it's pretty cool.
It like mine, man. I was on the run from my old man for a few years. He was like,
yeah,
I think he was going to, I don't know whether he was going to kill us or what he was going to do, but I'm going to find out.
I was 16 when I got in a fist fight with my dad. I almost killed him. It was rough, you know. Like he was a drinker. That's part of the reason. That's part of the reason I don't drink.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise, I think at the end of the day, I think stock entrepreneurs need to remember that their business is a bit like the stock market, right? There's ups and downs. There's never any consistency. In reality, there's no company like that anyway. I mean, particularly when you look at COVID, and like I just saw Pizza Hut or something has gone into receivership, and that's a big chain, right? And you're going to wonder whether they were on the brink or whether that just pushed them over. Who knows? But the reality is that, you know,
here's the thing: is most people are less than 3 months away from bankruptcy. The vast majority of companies are less than 3 months from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
If you cut somebody's cash flow off for 3 months, most of them can't survive that. They can't come back.
Yeah, oxygen. They cut your oxygen off.
You know? So like I'm writing another book. I wrote it already. It's being edited called The 8-Minute Money Machine. I'm keeping this 8-minute series going because I was a hedge fund manager. I feel like I understand money better than most people will. And that's not to brag or impress. I just dealt with money a lot. So I have some principles now that I don't trade much anymore. I do it for fun, but I don't do it with large amounts of money because I used to have to watch it all the time. I'd come into work and lose 100 grand in a day and then come back and make 200 grand and then go back and lose 300 grand. And I have to go back into work and do it again and again and again. Most people don't know what that's like. It takes a whole different type of person. And you have to build that stomach for that to be able to do that.
Yeah, mental.
Not take it personally every time you lose money. So instead of that, I have a different philosophy. Is I stay broke and I fill my money buckets in tiers, right? There's 5 buckets and there's everything from just cash in the bank, 3 months. Right. Just to make sure, you know, if you're single, it's 3 months. If you have kids and dependents, it should be more like 6 months. You know, you can kind of define how you do it, but that much money just in the bank, just ready to go, you know, maybe some in cash or gold or some, you know, easily convertible thing as well. Then you want to look at life insurance and investment grade life insurance. And that's a whole 2-hour conversation. Then you want to look at portfolio assets. So gold, stocks, commodities, you know, bonds, whatever else, right? That you have a portfolio that can grow. Then you want to look at real estate. And why is real estate so far down the list? Well, it takes a lot of time and energy and attention to build a real estate portfolio. It's not an overnight thing and you can't liquidate it like that. It can take you 6 months to get out of a bad investment in real estate. So that's why I recommend it later because you can do the, you know, basically stocks and cash and gold and all this other stuff. You can manage that with very little time. You research it once, you put it together, you maybe check out on it every 6 months and you can liquidate it if you really need to. With real estate, good luck. So then that would be the 4th bucket. And the 5th bucket is what I call high risk. And the high risk stuff is the crypto and the angel investing and the this and that and the other thing. And yeah, you can get some sick returns in all those things. You know, I've had very good luck with crypto, but it could also go the other way. You lose all your money. So that's way too risky for most people. And if you don't have those first tranches filled and those first buckets filled, it's really hard to be objective about a high risk investment. You're going to end up doing squirrely things and watching it too much and freaking out every time it, you know, flips and flaps. Like there was a point at which with all the crypto I owned, my net worth would fluctuate 5 or 10% in a day. And I was like, this is wild. If I didn't have cash on hand, I would be freaking out right now. And a lot of my friends were. I remember like 2017 when it was going up like crazy and it would go all over the place and then crash again. I was like, they didn't have the capacity to not be emotional about it. And I was like,
the reality, crypto and stuff is more gambling than investing right now. Really, you're just gambling on the future until it becomes a more solid.
Yeah, it's pure speculation. I can't really think of a good use case for a lot of the cryptos out there. I think Bitcoin might stick around, but anything else is kind of a crapshoot at this point. Ethereum, I'm okay with too, and I think Ethereum has some utility to it. People are building things on Ethereum that makes it more valuable. So
I think the banks are now starting to sort of take it on now too. So you can see that eventually it's a little bit, takes a while for something to click in, but once the banks get hold of it, then you don't know that there's something there, right?
Well, and I think it's got to happen, right? Because the monetary system as it exists doesn't solve all the problems that it needs to solve. You know, private ownership and transactions, you know, it's very challenging to use cash now with COVID. So like we need a better way to keep our transactions digital and secure and away from prying eyes, because privacy is partially what you spend your money on, right? You should have autonomy in being able to spend your money. And, you know, there's arguments for and against that, but I believe that a free society should be able to have private transactions.
It's actually really funny in Australia. I guess it's funny. It's bad for some people. Is that apparently the crooks are having trouble laundering their money now because we've got states locked down, so you can't move between states. You can't. There's not a lot of
can't go to a casino or
casinos and roll over the money and launder the money. And obviously the crooks aren't very smart, so they haven't gotten into crypto yet, right? Mostly. And so it's like, I'll pull back. So we have a thing called JobKeeper in Australia, where they basically pay the employees to keep, or employers to keep paying the employees so that they would keep them on, right?
Mm-hmm. Like PPP, we have something similar here.
Yeah. They've sort of come up with something off the UK model or something. The reality is, I think we're going to call it Crookkeeper, right? So these guys might have to get paid by the government and stop laundering money, right? Because it's like, but cash is becoming so, apparently thousands of ATMs have been shut down now and stuff. So cash is moving away from the marketplace, and the banks are recognising that they could get away with it and not have to provide that entry because people don't want the cash. And it's going to change society dramatically once that happens.
Well, I just heard that the Fed in America, and there's central banks all over the world, so I'm sure they'll follow suit eventually, but the Fed in Boston, I believe, is partnering with MIT in order to create open source cryptocurrency tools for central banks. And I think that's actually pretty progressive. You know, for all the things that the Fed can be blamed about, I think that's actually a kind of a cool thing that they're going to make open source cryptocurrency tools that anybody can build on and use. With MIT, which is, you know, they're pretty smart.
And I think in some respects, I mean, despite the downside of COVID, I think that the upside of it is that a lot of technology and a lot of thought processes, like Australia, they brought forward telehealth, which they thought was going to take them 10 years to get here. And now you can talk to your doctor on the I don't know how they was going to be that difficult, but apparently it was, right? For a government to do, is be able to actually talk to your doctor and not go see them. Like apparently that was hard for the government to do.
Remember when they tried to do the Obamacare website? It was $1 billion sham, and it like never worked right.
Yeah.
Who spends $1 billion on a website?
Got paid the $1 billion on the website. That's what I want to know. So like someone made a lot of money out of a website. And I think that's I think probably coming full circle on the whole thing with Masterminds is that if the reality is you don't need big numbers, you don't need a big cost involved. And I think in this day and age, in terms of what people know, and then they don't have a job anymore, let's say, then you've got that great scenario of the fact that you can start an online business. And I think Masterminds, you know, you convinced me pretty much that it would be a great idea because at the end of the day, it's quick. And if you can convince 15 people to give you money, then you've done the marketing research you need to do to get to that point, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and we teach a little bit about that in the book. Obviously, it's not a sales or a marketing book, and we do more of that in our program. But if people want to check it out, I have a PDF link. I just realized like a lot of you people are probably in Australia, I'd imagine. So if you don't want to deal with having it shipped to you, which I will happily ship it to you, it's just more expensive and it'll take longer.
Takes a while.
You can go to you can go to 8minutemastermind.com/PDF, 8minutemastermind.com/PDF, and you can check it out there as well.
Okay, cool.
We won't hammer you too hard on shipping. We'll just sell you the ebook and that'll be that. But you get the ebook if you buy the physical copy anyway. So.
Yeah, Amazon Australia's got a little bit better, but I believe that they still ship books out of the UK. They print and ship out of the UK. So one day when they start printing in Australia with actual books, I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, I think Amazon's pretty new there, so hopefully.
They're slowly getting the market, but you could see everybody's saying, "Oh no, they haven't made many sales and they're not doing too well and all sort of stuff." And you go, they don't care about that. It's the whole story, right? They're going to basically move through that process until they own the market and people are not paying attention and they're just going to get caught out.
Well, you think we'd understand that by now because Jeff Bezos has come on record saying that your margin is my opportunity. Like, I'll lose money as long as it takes to push you out of the market and then I can charge whatever I want.
Yeah.
Own the market. I mean, Amazon isn't even the cheapest alternative. You can buy a lot of cheaper things at other places, but you can't beat the fact that it's going to show up at your door tomorrow and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, no, I'm
willing to pay a little more so I never have to go to Target or Walmart again. You know?
That's right, exactly. And the customer service and stuff. I mean, I bought something online the other day and I went to the actual supplier website and looked at it, and they're in America. And looked on Amazon, it was the same price, but the freight was slightly cheaper. So I've decided to buy it on Amazon because I figured, well, at the end of the day, I've got a much better way of knowing it's going to arrive on time, and you know what I mean, like it's going to be managed. So that trust level.
It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't have to re-enter my form. I don't have to worry about like some weird customer service thing that I'm not used to. It's all in one place. And that's the biggest brilliance is that they made it about customers since the beginning. They're always pushing to make it better for customers. A lot of things I order is there the next day now. And it's not even guaranteed the next day.
I know, it's bizarre. Like even in Australia, like we're getting stuff, next day and you think, well, that's pretty quick. Like even books are coming faster. So I think I think that's the trick, and I think you probably said a solid thing. Probably part of Masterminds too is focus on the customer, focus on the person.
Mm-hmm.
If their experience is good, then that's the main thing, because at the end of the day, their experience is what's going to make or break it, right?
That's right. And I just want to help people, man. And if masterminds are one way to do that, great. I'm not sold on that being the only way to help people. I just think it's a great place to start. Given all the alternatives, and I've looked at all of them, I've done all of them. I believe masterminds. I keep coming back to them over and over again, both as a teaching tool, as a learning tool, as a, I got invited to one next week that Pete Vargas is putting on. He did a huge, like 50, 60,000 person free challenge that led into his last big thing with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, and he's having Dean come on and a bunch of really like awesome people. And I'm sure he can charge a lot of money for this, but he's like just inviting me for free, which I thought was really cool. So
nice.
I'm not saying that to brag or impress anybody, but like it's been one of these things that now that I've been in the game long enough, and I'm kind of known as the mastermind guy, and I wrote the book on the subject. By the way, I read every other book on the subject, every one I could find, everything I could find. And some of them were god awful, some of them were pretty good. I actually was ordering one before I wrote my book and giving it to my clients just so they have a resource. And that one's called Leveraging Masterminds. But I just, I felt like I could do better. I felt like I had more experience. I felt like I had done more of these, and I had my own methodology, and people have really responded to it. Like I haven't heard too many bad things about the book. I've had one person ask for their money back, and I guarantee every book. So out of thousands and thousands of books we've sold now, one person refunded. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Some people get a bee in their bonnet. They just want
or they just want to be the one, right? The one
exactly.
guy.
I want to be the person.
Great. Okay, cool. Here's your $10. Goodbye.
It's interesting. Actually, I've started buying, because we're making a bit of a play for the podcast market with a podcast platform, and I bought a book on podcasting, and the front cover was really nice, and the website was really nice, and I got the book and realized all they'd done is basically taken their ebook PDF essentially and whacked it in a book, and it was so disappointing that they'd got so far, and then basically at the end of that, it was just really just a PDF report inside a book. And you think
that's one thing I wasn't going to do. If I was going to write a book, it's going to be a book. It's not the longest book in the world, so it's less than 200 pages, but it's packed with value. Like
that's enough. Like most books on Amazon, below 200 pages get read, right? It's the big books that never get read.
Yeah. Well, and Tim Ferriss crushes it. His whole thing is like, if you're going to write a book, but I don't have 3 years and 60,000 words in me. I just want to get it out the door.
Yeah. And I think we do a lot of books with clients, and I think 40,000 words is a nice number. It's achievable within a, say, 3 or 4 month period to write something like that. And if you can't explain your concept in 200 pages, you're certainly not going to be able to do it in 400.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I'm grateful for the whole experience. It's made me a better writer. It's made me more concise. It's really given me I understand now that great editors, ghostwriters are worth their weight in gold, because I'm not good at like formatting and getting the chapters right. I can just write a lot, hand it off, and say, hey, make this a book.
And I think you got to put your ego away, because we used to say, you're an author, not a writer, because the idea of the information is really the important part, and getting the words are just the mechanics of getting it done.
That's right. Yeah, and it's just been very gratifying. And I was scared to publish it for a very long time. It was never good enough. And I'm so glad I did. I know you work with a lot of authors, so you can understand that.
Yeah.
If anybody's out there listening that's an author, just get it done. Get it out there. It's not going to... And the cool thing about it now is, like with KDP and some of these tools, you can update it. Like I updated my book twice so far. I added some stuff. I changed a chapter. People were like, oh, it would be really cool if you talked about this. I added a virtual mastermind chapter for COVID. It's okay to update it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's not set in stone. Like it is cumbersome when you got to update print versions, but it's not impossible. And within a week, it's done. So it's not like you have to live with these things that you've wanted to change in your book. You can change it, and then the new person gets it. It's got a whole new version. So it's not quite as bad as it used to be, where there's somebody print 10,000 books and send it to a bookstore, and that was it.
Well, and if it's a book to get clients, then it's a great reason to reach out. Say, hey, I just updated my book. Here's the new copy. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. And as I think you said something interesting when we were talking about before, which we'll probably wrap up on, but the idea of doing a mastermind is that you're actually getting all this information, which essentially could be a book anyway.
Yeah,
so you really, you're learning as you're going, and I think that's the best way to do it, is learn from clients. But as you're learning as you're going, you can create a book off just the back of what you learn, and you didn't have to really even write a single word if you keep record of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I record all my calls. Like I have something like 3,000 calls recorded, and it's a lot of material that I can use. There's a new app that I haven't been able to utilize yet because I don't use Thinkific. They do use Vimeo though. It's called Searchy.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Stu McLaren came up with it, or it's his team that did it. And I really love it because you basically can search a keyword and whatever you're looking to learn about, and all the times it shows up in the video, it indexes the audio, and then it tells you where on timestamps where it is in the video. So if you want to learn about a specific topic, it's really great for courses.
Yes.
If you want to just like, oh, I just want to learn about this, and where does he talk about this or she talk about this?
Yeah.
Really
Because I think the
valuable.
danger is some of these times that somebody will record a 1 hour video and you want to know 1-2 minutes of piece of information, and then you've got to get through that 1 hour and you miss it. You missed the bit anyway because you got sick of listening to the bit that you didn't want to listen to. You actually just wanted that bit and you couldn't
You
find
zoned out. You start clicking around.
Yeah. And you miss it anyway, right? So,
Yeah.
well, thanks,
Or
Brad.
you have to dig through the transcript.
Thanks, Brad, for coming. I mean, we could probably talk for hours on this, but
Oh, my pleasure.
yeah, and I really appreciate you, and thanks for you taking your time to sort of impart with stuff on memberships and sort of masterminds. And I think at the end of that, what we'll do is we'll put some links up in terms of your book and stuff like that, so people can get access
That'd be
to
great.
it. And
And if anybody wants to reach out with questions or if anything resonated with you, please reach out to me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Brad Hart. I love hearing from people. And I hope you guys build masterminds and change the world with them because they're really powerful tools.
And you've got a really great little free mastermind 21, I think it's 21-day mastermind thing, which is really great. So yeah, it's certainly worth having a go, even if at a free level. So really appreciate your time, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.